Hello! This video will show you how to help students and parents create usernames and passwords for both the FAFSA and the ORSA. My name is Zane Stevens and I work in the Financial Aid Office at Lane Community College, and I'm a member of the Oregon Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, commonly known as OSFA. I'll be your narrator for this FAFSA ORSA completion video, logging in, usernames, and passwords. This is the second video of our 9 core videos. I'm really happy to be a part of this project because OSFA is such a supportive and fun organization. I was happy that OSFA asked for volunteers for this project because it meant they got a chance to share important financial aid information with you all, the high school counselors, Aspire mentors, and high school volunteers. For a short time while in college, I was an Aspire mentor, so I really support the work you all do. We'll start with the FAFSA first. This is what the main FAFSA page currently looks like. FAFSA students need to create a username and login in order to use the system. This username and password is called a Federal Student Aid Identification, or an FSA ID for short. The FSA ID process will seem familiar. It's similar to all the other usernames and passwords required on websites. However, the FSA ID is much more powerful than a regular password. Students use their FSA ID to not only complete their FAFSA, but to sign other official federal financial aid documents, such as a student loan promissory note. For that reason, it's very important that FSA IDs are safeguarded, and only the person identified on the FSA ID may create it or use it. The student and parent may create an FSA ID in advance of filing their FAFSA at fsaid.ed.gov. FSA IDs may also be created on demand in the FAFSA application. Regardless of when the FSA ID is created, it should be kept securely. The FSA ID will be used throughout the student's college career and after if they have federal student loans. The FSA ID creation process can take several minutes. It's much more involved than a simple web logon and password. Users will create security questions and will be asked to confirm the email address and mobile phone number reported. Please ensure that your students do not use an email assigned by their high school or district. Students often lose access to these email accounts once they've graduated. Parents will use the same FSA ID for subsequent dependent students when completing the FAFSA, and will also use their FSA ID if they borrow a federal loan. FSA IDs should not be shared. If a parent is undocumented, they will not be able to create an FSA ID as they will not match with the Social Security Administration. Do not worry. Parents in this situation will still report their information on the FAFSA and will use an alternative method such as printing and mailing a signature page to sign the FAFSA. Students will need to use their current legal name as listed in the Social Security database to log into the FAFSA. Their name will be matched with the database. Any discrepancies will result in delays processing their financial aid. In some circumstances, students may not be able to fit their full names into the space allotted on the FAFSA. This is especially true of students with hyphenated or 2 last names. Just have the student list as much of their name as space allows. Students will also need to use their Social Security number to log into the FAFSA or to create their FSA ID. Some eligible students do not have Social Security numbers. For example, students from the Marshall Islands, and will have an alternate identification number assigned to them. As with their name, students will need to use the date of birth associated with their official Social Security record. When beginning a FAFSA transaction, students will be asked to create a FAFSA save key. This extra layer of security allows students to save an incomplete FAFSA and return to it later. It also allows a parent to log into the FAFSA without the student present to provide information or to sign the FAFSA, for example. Let's move on to the ORSA. This is what the first ORSA page looks like. Before a student can begin completing the ORSA, they must first fill in several questions in order to determine that the ORSA is the correct application for them. A student will complete either a FAFSA or an ORSA, but not both. ORSA students will create a username and login for the system. The ORSA process will also seem familiar. It's similar to all the other usernames and passwords required on websites. Students and parents will each create an ORSA username and password. ORSA also limits each email to only one user account. This can be an issue for parents who do not use email on their own. To work around this issue, Gmail users may add a plus sign and a number to their email address. In our example, janedoe@gmail.com becomes janedoe +3@gmail.com. The ORSA system will read this as a unique email, but the Gmail system will send both emails to the same inbox. A parent's unique email is the preferred communication, but ORSA allows this workaround if necessary. Both the student and at least one parent must create an ORSA account. The student will use the same login each year when they file their ORSA. The parent's login can be used to sign ORSA applications for multiple students. This is the FAFSA login page. This is where the student enters their data. The form assumes the student has an FSA ID already and will ask the student to provide that information. If the student does not have an FSA ID, they can click this link to create an FSA ID. We recommend creating an FSA ID before starting to complete the FAFSA. Although we strongly recommend creating an FSA ID prior to the FAFSA, it is possible to log into the FAFSA using the student's unique identifiers. It may take a few extra minutes to create an FSA ID, but it'll really save the student and parent time in the long run to do so. This intimidating disclaimer pops up, reminding students, parents, and FAFSA helpers that this is a federal government computer system and that unauthorized usage is not allowed. Use may be monitored. In order to get this training ready for you, we created these slides prior to October 1, 2020. When you log into the FAFSA system between October 1, 2020 and June 30, 2021, you'll have a choice of two different school years, the current 2020-2021 school year, as illustrated above, and the upcoming 2021-2022 school year. Please be sure your students select the correct year when completing the FAFSA. If the student is planning on graduating in 2021, be sure that your student is selecting the 2021-2022 FAFSA, as this is the year they will be attending college. Students can log into their ORSA account or create an ORSA account from this main page. We recommend having students use the FAFSA ORSA filter the first time they file, which can be found quickly by Googling FAFSA ORSA filter. As students return to the ORSA website, or if you know the ORSA is the right form for them, you can use this direct link. The student and parent will create their ORSA usernames and passwords at this link. Remember, only one account may be created per email. Parents will use the same parent login and password to sign ORSAs for multiple children or for themselves. This is the starting screen for the ORSA. We recorded this training before October 1, 2020, so we're using old screenshots. Please be sure that your student is selecting the 2021-2022 ORSA, as this is the year they will be attending college. The icons list what actions are available for each academic year's ORSA. Click on the icon to get started. The most common action is to start, edit, or complete an application. Once the student has completed the application, they will be able to invite a parent to sign the application. The parent will log in and use the Sign an Application action. Students can view or download an application. This is helpful when applying for certain scholarships, for example. Please help your students and parents save their usernames and passwords in a safe place. If they have a usual place in their phone, for example, have them save the information there. These usernames and passwords will be used to complete a FAFSA or ORSA each year the student is in college and to make updates or corrections to an existing record. We encourage students and parents to create their usernames and passwords before their FAFSA or ORSA application. This not only saves time during a completion event, whether it be in person, like in pre-COVID days, or virtual, which we expect to be the case for the class of 2021, but it can help ensure the family is feeling confident heading into the completion process. Congratulations on completing another installment of the FAFSA ORSA completion training. We know that even in small doses, the information can be daunting, so please feel free to watch this session as many times as you need. You can even come back to it when you're helping students. If questions arise, you can contact an Oregon college or university financial aid office for additional clarification. When you are ready, you may move on to the next session. Thank you so much for joining us.